This episode is brought to you by the Thrive Tribe. Check it out at chasingbrighter.com/Thrive Tribe. Hello, welcome to today's episode where we're going to be talking about why inclusion matters for women. And if you keep listening, later in this episode, we talk with Cindu Thomas-George, an inclusion and belonging strategist, professor, and speaker. During Women's History Month, we love to highlight what's important for women.
A lot of the things that are happening right now in the news. And we really wanted to figure out how we can use Chasing Brighter to help our listeners understand what's going on and help maybe ease some anxieties, as well as help us learn more. Part of Chasing Brighter is us always learning and being curious about things. We are tackling the topic of DE. I know what it stands for and I know pieces of it, but I think this is where we were like, "Hey,
Yeah.
let's learn a little bit and let's share with our listeners and educate them on what is DEI and why does it
Yes.
matter?"
I think the term is being used as a weapon and it's scary, but really to realize if you are a woman, you fall under the protections of DEI. We're going to be talking about a lot of like the movements and laws that have been created that impact us today. If you are a working woman or woman in school or just trying to navigate the world, I hope that you learn a lot today and find this episode interesting.
Let's get into it.
And I know that DEI has been getting this big buzz. What is DEI? We wanted to talk about that and why that matters for us women as well. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are essential to advancing women's rights because they address systematic barriers that have historically excluded women, especially those from marginalized backgrounds. Diversity ensures that women of all backgrounds are represented. Inclusion ensures that women have a seat at the table and their voices are heard. Equity works to level the playing field by addressing historical and social disadvantages.
So, throughout history, progress in women's rights has been often driven by a commitment to DEI principles. Even though it wasn't always called DEI, this was about anything from the fight for voting rights to workplace protections and leadership opportunities. By embracing these principles, we create space for all women, regardless of race, ability, socioeconomic status, or identity, so that all of us can thrive, lead, and contribute meaningfully to society.
And so it's also important to recognize that historically, marginalized women have faced additional barriers. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. And the term is used to acknowledge the distinct experiences of Black and Indigenous communities while also recognizing the shared struggles of all people of color in facing systemic racism. Historically, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, LGBTQ plus women, and women with disabilities have faced additional barriers in the fight for equality due to overlapping systems of discrimination.
Yeah.
For example, Black women played a crucial role in women's suffrage movement, yet many were still denied the right to vote due to racist policies. Wage gaps persist with Black, Indigenous, and Latino women earning significantly less than white women and men.
LGBTQ women face higher rates of workplace discrimination, violence, and lack of legal protections in many parts of the world, as well as women with disabilities. Women with disabilities experience compounded challenges, including inaccessible workplaces, healthcare discrimination, and higher rates of gender based violence. Historically, they have been left out of conversations about feminism and equality.
Again, tying that into DEI, what did that do? How did that play a role in advancing women's rights? We have some examples of how DEI efforts have been critical in challenging systemic barriers and creating more inclusive opportunities for all women. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Title IX that happened in 1972, a landmark civil rights law in the US that prohibits sex based discrimination in federally funded education programs and activities. Title IX significantly expanded opportunities for women in sports, academics, and leadership, paving the way for greater gender equity in education. Really, having a female athlete and being a female athlete myself, that's where Title IX
Yeah.
really resonates with me about kind of
Yes.
having equal funding for the male and the female sports and how that plays out a lot of times in collegiate sports and also in high school sports. So, how that played a role for us is that last year our school started a softball and baseball team, and they were not getting enough girls for the softball team. The athletic director's son plays baseball, and they were having all the baseball boys go around and recruiting softball players. If we could not get a softball team, then we could not have a
Can I get a
baseball team
baseball team?
because it had to be equal, which really impacted our family and our
Yeah.
child and all of the girls who ended up discovering having a talent in other sports. So that really impacts our life every day.
That's a good one. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is also called Title VII, was legislation that made it illegal
Illegal.
to discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in employment. And that helped women, especially women of color, gain more workplace protections and open doors to careers previously closed to them. This is really important because
Yeah.
the most recent Me Too movement, global
Yeah.
movement that brought attention to sexual harassment and assault,
Yeah.
particularly in workplaces, has driven a lot of corporate initiatives and policy changes. And I think there is a fear today that a lot of these policies are under threat. And that's the part that's unclear. When companies are rolling back DEI programs, does that mean that these particular examples are no longer valid
Yeah.
or something else? And I feel like that's where things are a little unclear. And I'm really excited to be interviewing Cindu Thomas-George, who is going to be talking to us. She's in the trenches of DEI and can really
Yeah.
share with us, I think, a lot about what's going on.
We are so excited to have our guest today, Cindu Thomas-George. She is the founder of Shotki Training and an award-winning professor of communication studies at the College of Lake County. For the last 20 years, she has designed and led professional development experiences that promote inclusion, equity, intercultural intelligence, and anti-racism. She also partners with Northwestern's Kellogg School for Nonprofit Management, teaching and coaching on the topic of inclusive leadership. A recognized public speaker, Sindhu is a member of the Camadras Speakers Collaborative. Her dedication to inclusion transcends professional boundaries. Sindhu is a co-founder of the Chicago Women's Leadership Accelerator, a conference dedicated to increasing representation of women in leadership roles. She is also the founder of the South Asian Solidarity Movement, a social impact organization that creates educational opportunities and community building experiences designed to encourage a commitment to anti-oppression, inclusion, and cross-racial solidarity. Furthermore, Sindhu founded and currently co-leads the Women of Color Employee Resource Group at the College of Lake County. Sindhu resides in Chicago's Ukrainian Village neighborhood with her husband and children.
Sindhu, thank you so much for joining us. And I think we really want to start talking to you today just about your own journey, your own experiences, and how that has shaped who you are now.
My journey is I'm a daughter of Indian immigrants, and that is really integral to who I am and the challenges that I've had and why I do the work that I have. My parents immigrated here in the early 70s from Kerala, India, which is the southernmost tip of India. I grew up in a predominantly white community in the early 80s outside of Chicago. We were the only family of color and the only immigrant family. Because of that, I experienced a lot of unfortunate xenophobia, racism, and othering from the age of 5. I grew up learning to feel ashamed of my Indianness and my otherness. And it was really, I would say, I still have trauma from it today. When you're an adolescent and you're trying to develop yourself and you don't fit in at school and then you don't fit in at home because I was American born, first woman, first, second person in my family to grow up. I have an older brother, 3 years older than me. I really didn't feel a sense of belonging at all. And it really impacted my identity and my mental health. And I'm still unpacking, unlearning, and healing from that. And 45 years old, I'll be 45 next month. That really informed my perspective. And especially because I experienced a lot of racism, specifically in xenophobia, I always looked at the world through the lens of race, which is drew me to the career that I have. And then I, went to grad school. Had a couple of years. I was in San Francisco. It was the first time I was in a BIPOC majority place. the institutions that I taught at and that I was studying at. It was the first time that white people were the numerical minority. It was really empowering for me, and it helped me to unlearn the shame. And also, what I
Mm.
was studying helped me to really claim my identity. I was 22, 23, 24. And then I went into higher ed teaching at the age of 25. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I then experienced not just racism and xenophobia, but sexism and ageism and elitism. And I've had a lot of really interesting experiences, unfortunate ones. And it was my experiences of being on the wrong side of inclusion that really inspired me and made me realize the need to create cultures of inclusion and belonging and to help ensure that other people didn't have to experience what I had. So it's a little bit of my journey.
I watched a couple of your YouTube videos, and just everything that you're speaking about is just really resonating right now. The last couple of years, this has been building up in terms of this topic. How would you, in your words, for our listeners, describe DEI?
The literal translation is diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that DEI has been a workplace initiative over the last 60 years, and it helps to right the wrongs that we've had in society, right? And I think that's one of the uncomfortable
Mhm.
aspects people are dealing with today because we don't know as a nation about our own history, right? People are really unaware of the systemic and institutionalized racism and discrimination
Mhm.
that Black Americans have experienced, that women have experienced. And we have this from the president, we're hearing we are a meritocracy and we need to work hard and we will achieve. But we're not realizing that we don't all come to the table or the organization with the same opportunities, the same access, the same privilege, and the same experiences. And so we need to build organizations and initiatives that help to empower historically marginalized, excluded, and discriminated people so they can be equal, right? Because there's nothing equal about our history and our society today. So I think DEI really helps to do that. We see an increase in representation of women and people of color and LGBTQ plus and people with disabilities in leadership roles. The other part of it, which I really focus my work on, is us creating a sense of inclusion and belonging. So creating an environment in which anyone, regardless of your social and cultural identities, can feel valued and respected and achieve at their highest potential, or at least have the ability to. And so that's really what I think DEI initiatives are really about. But if you listen to the rhetoric from our government officials, from the media, we're hearing that this is about affirmative action and quotas.
Mhm.
That's really not what.
Right. I heard Elon Musk saying, oh, you watch 15 surgeons do surgery and then you hire the black surgeon who did the surgery wrong. And just, I want to throw out there research shows that black male doctors, their patients live longer, and also female surgeons have better outcomes. And so research and statistics also show that when we have marginalized communities have a seat at the table, right, they're actually outperforming their white male counterparts.
Yeah, and that's because Black doctors and women surgeons, they understand bias, right? They've been in some way probably othered. And so they have this awareness that white male surgeons might not, right? Because we have white cisgender males, healthy males, they benefit from a society that was built by them and for them, right? And so they have a lot of blind spots that other marginalized people don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you've come through the trenches of this, where do you feel like we stand in terms of women with equity and inclusion?
I think we are going backwards. And I think there has been, there's statistics, if you look at gender parity initiatives in the workplace, we actually are going backwards. There's some improvement for representation of leadership. Primarily, that's white women who have been given the invitation to the table. But I think we're going backwards, and definitely in the last month and a half, we are not moving in the right direction. For example, Mark Zuckerberg just a month ago said we need to have more masculine energy in the workplace.
Yeah.
And this is a supposed to be more liberal person who founded social media, one of the richest people in our country, shockingly saying we need to have more masculine energy. If you understand the energy and the embodiment of men in the workplace, they are the dominant power holding voices. And so to suggest that we need more of that and not more women is really and that's because his rhetoric matters. And so I study
Yeah.
bias a lot. I teach about bias, and we are so influenced by media. We don't even realize the subconscious biases that are developed when we listen to people like Mark Zuckerberg, who has a positionality, a privilege, and power. And then we're hearing the president and Elon Musk talk about being just spewing sexism and transphobia very freely and proudly. And that, whether we realize it or not, is really conditioning us to think differently about women. And there has been long-term stereotypes about women. We're weak, we're too emotional. Those are counterproductive to helping women accelerate in the workplace. When you think of a leader, you think of somebody who's strong, outspoken, courageous, really good at handling conflict from a non-emotional perspective. And that really is not the stereotypes of women, right? These biases are really being strengthened right now. And I think we're going to really see a lot less opportunities for women than we have in the past because we're being lumped into the DEI category.
Yeah.
Don't give things to people, they have to earn it. Women are the most populous in the United States. We are the most
Hmm.
educated. Women hold the most college education degrees, and we are just about half of the workforce, right? So 48% of women in the workforce, but we're oftentimes labeled as minorities. But we are not minorities. We are the numerical majority in the country. We are minoritized, which means we're pushed to the margins for situations outside of our control. And yes, I don't think we're going in the right direction.
I get really confused. I guess I think about last year in our book club, we read Shonda Rhimes' book, Year of Yes, and Shonda Rhimes gets all kinds of awards for diversity. She was like, I hate the word diversity because I'm just writing movies and shows about what I see in the world. This is the people around me and this is what I see. She was talking about that. And I think knowledge diversity has become weaponized. And so I just saw a blurb about, I don't know, that we're reporting from federal government reporting if any school is using DEI. And I guess that's why I'm confused because I'm like, there's diversity. I don't know how we can weaponize it and say that school is implementing DEI or whatever, because to me, that would be a positive to have equity
Yeah.
and to have a culture of inclusion. And so it really is confusing to me. And it's so hateful.
I think it's confusing and hypocritical because
Mhm.
as we hear the president say we need to give people the job that deserve it and not because of the color of their skin, he has given out pardons to the January 6th terrorist that terrorized the Capitol, and that's a handout. And if you look at who he's appointing into his office, Linda McMahon just got appointed in
Department of Education.
With no
what
qualifications.
does
Yeah.
he know about education? And we
Right.
have Patel, all these people that don't deserve it, right? Because they don't have the credentials, the quality
Yeah.
experiences. So as he's saying, we can't be handing things out, he is
Yeah.
essentially handing things out. So it's very confusing.
I'm very overwhelmed and I'm feeling depressed because we started the episode about all of the things that change because of DI, but then we are, like you're saying, going backward and there's a reduction in the workforce of diversity. Can you share with us some actionable ways that we can support equity and inclusion today?
Yeah, I think this is for everybody or just working moms supporting other.
Everybody.
I think one of the most important things we have to do is educate ourselves. What do they mean when they say diversity? Who's in the work? What's the history of exclusion that women have
Mhm.
faced? What are the challenges that we have faced? For example, woman representation has been stagnant, and there's something called the broken rung that says women experience the hardest challenge to move up in the beginning or mid level of their career for every 100 men who are promoted, only 81 women get the same opportunity. And that's women in general. I think it's also important to remember that we can't homogenize identity groups. So we're all women, but we have very different experiences because of intersectionality. So although 81 women for every 100 men get promoted, for Latina women, it's only 65, and for Black women, it's only 54. So know the intersections and realize that not everybody experiences the same workplace the same way. So if you want to support and uplift women, realize that when we split up women by race, there's a huge disparities that exist. Um, and then also thinking about mothers. It's not just by race, it's by are you child free? Do you have a child? And there's also so many disparities that exist within working moms. And so working moms are much less likely to be chosen for new roles and promotions. They earn less over time in terms of salaries, and they're usually expected to be held to higher standards. There's a statistic from the World Economic Forum that says that women upon retirement are expected to only have about 74% of the wealth that men have, despite having longer lifespans on average. So these are examples of realizing that you got to disaggregate the data and understand it. In terms of actions and what we can do, one is advocate for women to accelerate their careers. And so that could be through mentorship, through sponsorship. And so if you are a woman who is now not in a junior level role, be open to mentoring other women. I know that's something I do often. It's not easy, but a little bit of effort can make a huge difference in somebody else's life. Then go beyond mentoring and sponsor. There's this whole idea of sponsorship and how is that different? Sponsorship is like speaking other people's name in rooms that they're not in, connecting them to other people so that they can increase their social capital and the upward mobility and the trajectory of their career. I think that's really important. Another thing is advocate for early stage and mid-level career women to have access to professional development. Oftentimes, professional development is only given to people who are already arrived, right, in their careers. And so that's one of the reasons myself and Alicia Del Real started the Chicago Women's Leadership Accelerator, which Kelly, I think you came to one of them. Our whole goal is to provide accessible, quality professional development, leadership development for women. So there's so many programs like the Chicago Women's Leadership Accelerator. If you're in a position of power, how can we develop these women in our organization so that they can move up one day as well? And then be an ally, I think, is so important. You can be an ally to other women, even if you're a woman, but especially if you're a man. Be an ally to women, non-binary and trans women, and realize that allyship is a verb, it's not a noun. I think that a lot of times in the social media world that we live in, posting something, sharing something, hashtagging. I think you probably remember where 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, everybody and their mom cared about Black people, right? And they showed it by posting and sharing and having conversations online. But that only does so much, right? And so what can you do in person to be an ally for women in the workplace? If you see sexism, discrimination, othering, or hostility that somebody's experiencing, don't be a bystander, be a disruptor, right? Use your voice, use your position of privilege to call it out, to check in with the person. Women experience microaggressions at such a different rate than men. And microaggressions really over time, they impact our mental health. They impact our ability to perform. They impact our happiness at work. Even on indirect slights that you see that somebody may not be aware of, pull that person aside and say, hey, that might not have landed so well. Create awareness around this because not everybody was born to be inclusive, right? That's a learned skill. And then I would say two other things. Don't buy into tokenism. A lot of times we hold ourselves back as women. So we're like, there can only be one of us in the leadership roles or in my unit. And so we start to bully other women and create drama. And that's so disempowering when another woman is not lifting you up, but holding you back. I've experienced that myself. So realize that there's more room for that than just one person and stand in solidarity with each other. I think that's so important today, especially for women to be in community with each other across races, classes, and different identity groups. Yeah, and then I would say the last thing is make sure that there are voices at the table. Make sure that women are being invited to design the systems, initiatives, and programming because our workplaces were designed by and for men. That's why it's not such an inclusive place for us. If you're at that table, make sure that other women are with you.
I love that. And I am so glad you mentioned the Women's Leadership Accelerator. I went last year and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I wasn't able to make it in December because I had surgery,
Yeah.
but I plan to continue to attend. I think it's a great networking opportunity to meet other women and even what we do at Chasing Brighter in terms of really just being more introspective, right? Learning from others, hearing what they say, figuring out how we can make some changes and even get re-energized. I think part of this is continuing to inform us and have more of a spark as we continue to do our work and
Yeah.
help other women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that a statistic out there that women spend 80% of the world's wealth?
I
I
think
don't
it's something like that,
Because
Jess.
I think that's something, I think about. So I'm a solopreneur and I want it to be that way. But I think, how do I try to make a difference? So Kelly and I, we have our book club. We try to highlight all different kinds of authors, things like that. But one of the things I think about is where my dollar goes. And one of the things we've talked about is trying to purchase small business, small women-owned businesses, businesses led by women of color, LGBTQ plus businesses. And so I think that's something that I'm really disappointed in these big companies ending their DEI policies and practices. And so that has me really thinking, how do I want to spend my money? I think that can be really impactful.
We have so much buying power just because we're 51% of the population. And so being intentional on where you spend your dollar, who you support, it's so important. The Chicago Women's Leadership Accelerator, we're very intentional about only supporting women-owned brands. So our photographer, the wine that we buy, women Chicago designers. So you can be intentional, but it takes planning, right? Inclusion is intentional. It's not just something that you do automatically. Yeah.
I love that. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, and I'm going to say it in my less eloquent way, is really when we're in the workplace, really building up other women and really being conscious
Yeah.
of the women who we are surrounded by, whatever level they are, continuing to nurture that, especially in the fact that a lot of, like for myself, I'm in technology, it's predominantly male
Yeah.
dominated. And I have a handful of women that I work with and continue to be really conscious and intentional about maybe even what I say about those women in front of other men or things like that, that I don't feel like I don't know. I'm much more thoughtful about that than I may have been in the past. Everyone, you just complain about anyone. And I think being more conscious about who you're saying it and how you're saying it, because I do notice that the men have a very like standard traditional, granted, I'm working with mostly like Gen Xers, very
Yeah.
traditional view of men and women. And a lot of us women let that go by. Oh, she's such a woman or whatever those things are. And we need to not allow that, but we also need to not play into it.
Yeah. And it makes me think about how a lot of the business deals are done after work over whiskey, that women are not even in.
Yeah.
So just thinking about how, when you create a workplace initiative like a happy hour, how is this impact? Who is this advantaging and disadvantaging? A lot of times I'm a mom, I have a little bit more freedom because my kids are older, but there's no way I could go to happy hour after work because I've been away all day, right? So how are we designing social situations is
Mm.
inclusive to women? Being in community with women and creating communities. ERGs are a really great way.
Mm-hmm.
I started a women of color ERG at my workplace 13 years ago, and it's been great for to be in community with other women in higher ed, women of color who are underrepresented, to talk about our challenges, experiences, and lift each other up. If you're not in a workplace, what can you do to create a community of women so that you can be in community with other people experiencing things? Was just so empowering, and I find it to be really life-giving.
I think that is a really great point. And again, you have to make time for these things. And a
Yeah.
lot of us were so busy, but really thinking about how you're spending your time is going to pay back so
Yeah.
much greater by just taking the time to do that.
And I think about when you were talking about your programming and you're still processing childhood. I think about that all the time. Being a working mother, Kelly and I are going to a podcast conference in April, and we were like booking our travel. And I was just like, the pressure I feel to get back home and to not leave my partner alone. I'm not saying he doesn't feel that way, but he has business trips. And I think the decision making for him is a little bit different. Oh, I have to go to business trip. But the programming of what a mother does is so strong in me that I have guilt of I got to be back or got to do that. So I've been really trying to just be aware of that, of it's okay. You can go do these things.
When I'm away, I'm still coordinating play dates and texting for the carpool, right?
Mhm.
When my husband's away, he's away, right? And so we can't always check out. We don't have the ability
Right.
for whatever they were socialized, conditioned to think like that, but we should have the ability
Yeah.
to out sometimes.
Yeah. That makes me so sad when you said the statistic of women with children are
Yeah,
less likely to be promoted. And it's just, there was this reel I saw on social media, and the guy was saying, who do you think whatever impacted the world the most, women or men? She said, women. He said, a man developed the light bulb, a man did this, a man did that. She said, but a woman gave birth to them. The guy just sat there and was quiet. Like, we're giving birth and raising these children, and then we're like being punished for raising the children. And so it's that mental load piece too, which I find.
I actually was demoted when I came back from maternity leave with Beckett. I didn't really recognize it so much at the time, but looking back, I realized that I had a boss who was a
yeah,
director. I came back, my boss was a manager because my director added somebody between us because I had taken enough leave and things happened. That was at HP.
yeah.
Like I probably could have fought for something, but I think that's the other part too is like women don't, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I just want to go where I am. But that was really unfair for
Was
me.
I didn't even take maternity leave when I was both of my pregnancies. And one was because I wasn't tenured. I actually got tenure the day that I delivered. I was told if you take maternity leave, the board has the right to deny your tenure. I was never able to really enjoy my child. It's 14 years. I could have sued them. I just didn't
Yeah.
know. We have to advocate for ourselves and
Yeah.
others, use our voice to resist and challenge, because otherwise, make America great again means many things. And I think one of it means is make women go back to their place where they were before women empowerment and women's rights. And that's not something I'm willing to accept.
Yeah. I have a really hard time with that phrase. Just try to soothe myself and not be triggered. But I think that kind of goes back to being a working mother when the businesses are created by men. I don't want to make men evil, right? It's just like we talk about program, like a lack of knowledge, right? Of even thinking of what that would look like and how we could set up systems to be more inclusive. You had said that you are really passionate about creating inclusive cultures. Can you share a little bit more about that work?
Yeah, I'm a 20-year DEI practitioner. And so I do a lot of focus on inclusive leadership. And so it's coaching and teaching on the principles of inclusion and how you be an inclusive leader. I also I just train companies across different industries around inclusion and belonging. Just last week and tomorrow, I'm going to be doing one on implicit bias and microaggressions in the hospitality and tourism industry, and how it affects guest experiences and employee experiences, and what we can do to disrupt this to create a more inclusive experience for people. And it's for a Chicago organization. So when people come into Chicago, how can we ensure that they are not stereotyped and not experiencing microaggressions? There's such a breadth and depth to that work, but yeah.
I love that. You are doing all kinds of things. What are all the things you're teaching?
I'm a tenured professor at the College of Lake County, so I'm an interculturalist. I teach public speaking. My department is communication studies, and then I'm a inclusion and belonging practitioner. Also been doing that for 20 years. And then I would say outside of being a mom and other things, I have two organizations that I founded. One is the Chicago Women's Leadership Accelerator. We're going on to our sixth. I'm doing it. We have over 250 women that have experienced us and lots of exciting things happening. We have an advisory board. It was a struggle in the beginning. I founded the South Asian Solidarity Movement, a
Mm.
nonprofit voluntary based organization that really encourages South Asians to give back, to strengthen their inclusion and their social justice lenses, and to be in community with each other because South Asians are such a diverse group. We have different religions and different languages and different traditions, but then also being in community with other BIPOC Chicagoans because Chicago is the most diverse city, but we're the most segregated one too. So we have
Yeah.
programming every quarter and we raise funds and we donate it to a nonprofit on the ground working towards the goals of our education program. Yeah.
I know you both know about Chicago Women's Accelerator,
Leadership Accelerator.
Leadership
Leadership
Accelerator.
Accelerator. Mhm.
So can you just tell me so you have like a couple programs throughout the year. Can you explain to our listeners what that entails?
It is right now we have twice a year. It's a full day program and it is professional development centered. So we have emotional intelligence, which is a full-blown workshop on that to increase your emotional intelligence and to unlock your own potential as a woman. And so what's holding you back? Who do you have a personal board? How can you move up in your career? And then I do inclusive leadership. We have a lunch panel with recognized Chicago businesswomen leaders that come and provide insight and share struggles and challenges and tips and advice for our attendees. And every attendee gets a professional headshot by an internationally recognized. We end with a network and community building happy hour. We have hot food and snacks all day. And yeah, and so it's in a nutshell twice a year. And then we started offering master classes for people to provide continuing education. So our next master class I'm going to be doing is on advocating for and showing up for Black women in the workplace. And so we have a website and a LinkedIn. You can check it out. I'm sure you can put it in the show notes. Like,
We will.
No, I love that. You're really inspiring me. I need to do something.
come out to Chicago.
I moved into a new office space where I have more space, and so I'm just debating on how to use that. And I do. So for us therapists, we can have like case consultations. And so there was a while where I was in a case consultation group, but it's like, how can I build a sense of community with other women and women leaders? And so I love that. I love that idea.
Another therapist, right?
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
industry needs to camaraderie and community building.
Yeah.
Cindu, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing with us all of your wisdom and expertise. Very grateful for having you as a guest.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was so great. So we're talking about DEI. We gave you the history. We told you what it was. And then you're now, what am I going to do about it? And so a lot of people are talking about boycotting places, not shopping
Mhm.
at places. So some things that you can do. So I found really interesting. I love Tabitha. She is a vegan. She cookbook author. She has a lot of beautiful, wonderful things at Target. She had done a reel this if you're boycotting Target, I am at Target right now and you are hurting me. I think about Miss Jessie's curls or Miss Jessie's products. I use Miss Jessie's Pillow Soft
Mm-hmm.
curls. That is a Black female owned business that is sold at Target. So, what you can do maybe instead of completely boycotting places like Target and Walmart because they dropped their DEI policy.
Or you can. You have to
Yeah. Oh,
figure
you
out.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you
Yep.
can also only go there and buy things owned by women, minority women. And so purchasing products at those larger corporations or shopping small and local, spending your purchases from women owned businesses, especially LGBTQ plus businesses or Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned female businesses.
And you can look for there's a stamp on products that say women owned, or you can go to Etsy and you can get details on owners. You can also just search the internet. We'll provide a couple links in our show notes, really to help look at ways to spotlight organizations themselves that support diverse entrepreneurs and staff.
Yeah.
aside from just big businesses. So we'll provide a link in terms of what are all the corporations that are maintaining a DEI program publicly,
Mhm.
as well as some of those other resources.
In my way, I'm like, I'm helpless. What can I do? How can I be part of the rebellion or whatever it is? And so I went on Etsy and ordered a bunch of graphic tees that were so fun. They were all by women owned businesses, and they all had things like girls just want to have fundamental rights. Those shirts, my shirt.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's my way of rebelling by having words on
Yes.
my shirt, but also by purchasing them from women-owned small businesses too. But Kelly and I love reading, so of course we're gonna recommend some books. I have not read any of these books. I think you read Lean In. Did
I
you read
did.
Lean In? Okay.
Yes.
So I really wanna read all these books now, but Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. That is a great book.
The Memo: What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure a Seat at the Table by Minda Harts.
And like I said, Lean In, Women Work in the Lead by Sheryl Sandberg.
And Disability Visibility: First Person Stories from the 21st Century by Alice Wong. It's a good one.
And also, it is really scary, but there are a handful of states, I want to say 15, that are recommending laws in the books right now to repeal some disability protections, which is really scary. I think that it's good for us to learn about other marginalized men. Finally, We Should All Be Feminists. That is a great book by
Mhm.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I apologize if I butchered that name, but that is a great book as well.
Yes. Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe so you hear our latest episodes as soon as they drop.
If you loved today's episode, share with a friend. Find us on Instagram, Facebook at Chasing Brighter, or check out our blog at chasingbrighter.com and follow us. Do you want to know more about Kelly and I? Read our blogs, find more tips, tools, and resources? Check that out at chasingbrighter.com. Thanks. Remember, your best life is away.